A quiet mind before the world wakes. There is a moment just before the world opens its eyes where silence still breathes. That moment is not empty. It is full of choice, full of the possibility to begin not with noise, but with alignment. But most people miss this moment, not because they don't have it, but because they've forgotten how to feel it. Many wake up not to light, but to alerts, not to breathe, but to pressure. The outside world hasn't even arrived, yet inside, it's already loud. The day hasn't begun, but the heart is already running. It's not the world that steals serenity. It's the unexamined morning that hands it over. There's a hidden desire most won't admit, to feel calm before chaos, to feel whole before responsibility, to feel steady before movement. But they reach for the phone, not themselves. They reach for control, not presence. And then they wonder why the day runs them, before they've had a chance to feel their own rhythm. Seneca once wrote, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." We think the morning is too short, but it's not. It's just misused. Misused on urgency, on reaction, on noise we didn't ask for but still allow in. And so the day begins without us, our body present, our attention elsewhere. Massimo Pigliucci reminds us, Stoicism is not about suppressing emotion, but mastering response. The morning is your training ground for that mastery. The first space where you remember that serenity is not found in perfect conditions. It's cultivated in how you enter the world before it enters you. Imagine your mind as a tuning fork. If the first strike is a scream, a feed, a flood of opinions, it will vibrate with static all day. But if the first touch is stillness, breath, a question, a silence, it hums with harmony. That vibration carries through every word you speak, every step you take, every decision you face. Before we rise to perform, to produce, to prove, we can rise to remember that before the world tells you who to be, you can choose. That before the rush begins, you can slow. That before the day unfolds, you can unfold inward. Because serenity is not lost. It's simply buried beneath what you forgot to pause and feel. And every morning, you get to begin again. Practice 1. Wake before the world, even if it's just 10 minutes. There is a moment when the world still sleeps, and in that moment, you are free. Free from obligation, free from roles, free from noise. Most never touch that space, not because it doesn't exist, but because the first thing they reach for is a screen. And with it, someone else's urgency, someone else's expectation, someone else's pace. Waking up to a screen is not just waking up to information, it is waking up to distraction. It's handing over your nervous system to a rhythm that isn't yours. The science is simple, but it's powerful. Your nervous system's first input defines its baseline for the day. Whether you begin with cortisol or calm, with dopamine or depth, determines everything that follows. It's not that you don't have time, it's that you start too externally, too reactive, too scattered. The day hasn't yet spoken, and already you've answered to what doesn't belong to you. Already your breath is faster. Already your thoughts are elsewhere. Already the center is lost. But if you wake in stillness, not reaction, even for 10 minutes, something changes. The light outside hasn't shifted, but something inside of you has. A small, invisible alignment that becomes the spine of your day. You don't need a 2-hour ritual. You need presence, just presence, without a feed, without noise, without interruption. Think of a river. It carries all that it touches, but beneath it, there is a rock, unmoved, grounded, centered. The rock doesn't fight the water, it shapes it. That's what these 10 minutes are. Not withdrawal, not control, but quiet strength, silent intention. Don't be the leaf that's taken downstream before it remembers its own weight. Be the rock, be the shape, be the rhythm that the rest of the day learns to follow. Before the world wakes, wake yourself, not with action, but with attention, because how you begin becomes what you carry. Practice 2, the mirror question. 1 minute of radical reflection. There's a quiet form of avoidance that many don't recognize. The habit of not looking at oneself, not truly, not deeply, just moving from bed to task, from screen to schedule, without ever pausing to ask, Who is waking up today? Not what role, not what responsibility, but who. Most people avoid their own gaze in the morning, not just the literal reflection in the mirror, but the deeper gaze, the one that sees not just the face, but the soul beneath it. And in this avoidance, they miss the opportunity to align, to meet themselves before they meet the world. The mirror isn't just glass, it's a gate, a silent invitation to presence. And in that silence, one question can shift your entire vibration. Who will I be today, even if nothing goes as planned? Not who should I be, not who others expect, but who, in stillness, in truth, am I willing to embody regardless of outcome? This question disarms the mind, it invites the heart, it realigns intention not with control, but with courage, because you can't control how the day unfolds, but you can choose your anchor. You can choose your posture before the first wave arrives. 1 minute, eye contact, breath, question, not for performance, but for grounding, for witnessing, for remembering, because how can you be present for the world if you haven't first been present with yourself? The mirror doesn't offer answers, it reflects them. And sometimes what you need most is not a plan, but a pause, not a strategy, but sincerity, the kind that looks back at you and waits until you stop hiding, until you ask, until you listen. Practice 3. Negative visualization. Fear without paralysis. There's a subtle resistance that lives in all of us, a desire to avoid thoughts that feel too dark, too heavy, too close to loss. But what we avoid does not disappear, it waits. It waits in the edges of our thinking, in the trembling of our expectations, and that waiting becomes fear, not loud fear, quiet, invisible fear, the kind that steals presence without making a sound. The Stoics understood something that modern comfort tries to erase, that facing loss doesn't create pain, denying it does, because the more we fear losing what we love, the more tightly we cling, and the more tightly we cling, the more we suffer at the very thought of its absence. And yet that very absence, imagined, held, witnessed, becomes a kind of preparation, a kind of gratitude. Seneca wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man." And in that line lives a truth we often try not to feel, that the avoidance of loss is the avoidance of life, that courage does not mean ignoring the worst. It means looking it in the eye and choosing love anyway. Each morning, a single minute of negative visualization, imagining the absence of something or someone you cherish, is not an act of despair, it is an act of awakening. It softens attachment, it sharpens appreciation. It doesn't make you cold, it makes you conscious. Think of armor, not as something that hides you, but something that prepares you, not as denial, but readiness, because the things we love are not owed to us. They are gifted for a time, and to honor that time fully, we must stop pretending they will last forever. In contemplating loss, you remember the miracle of what you have. You stop waiting for perfect. You start living from presence, and presence, not protection, is what keeps the soul alive. Practice 4. Stoic journaling in 3 lines. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from action, but from rumination, from circling the same thoughts, feelings, and fears without landing anywhere. Morning journaling, when left unanchored, can sometimes become this: a spiral of emotion without direction, a place where the mind loops instead of releases, where the heart opens but doesn't find closure. The Stoic mind seeks clarity, not volume, simplicity, not endless searching. And sometimes the clearest mirror is the one with the fewest words. 3 lines, that's all. Not because less is easier, but because less demands presence. Because brevity forces truth. It sharpens the soul like friction sharpens a blade. Each morning, you can meet yourself with 3 simple prompts, not elaborate, not decorative, just direct. What I fear, what I must, what I choose. These are not goals, these are awakenings. They are not there to fix you, they are there to reveal you. What I fear, because honesty with fear is the beginning of freedom. What I must, because responsibility grounds you in what matters. What I choose, because intention is the quietest form of power. When you repeat this daily, it doesn't become routine. It becomes ritual, a ritual of remembering who you are, not by narrating the past, but by clarifying the present. A moment to write not what happened, but what is real now, what you are meeting, what you are carrying, what you are willing to release. A journal doesn't need pages to reflect your truth. It needs focus. It needs sincerity. It needs a frame narrow enough for the soul to stand inside and speak without noise. And in just 3 lines, that voice, your voice, becomes unmistakably clear. Practice 5. Cold exposure or mindful discomfort. There's a quiet war we wage every morning, not against the world, but against discomfort. We shrink from it. We soften our steps to avoid it. We wait until the temperature of life feels perfect before we act. But that wait, that hesitation, it teaches the body one thing: fragility. Avoiding discomfort doesn't keep you safe. It makes you brittle. Because when the unpredictable arrives, and it always does, you haven't built the muscle to meet it. You've only built the instinct to retreat. But Stoicism was never about retreat. It was about readiness, about meeting life not with defense, but with grounded presence. Science now affirms what ancient wisdom intuited. A short burst of cold, even 30 seconds, activates the vagus nerve, the body's hidden thread to resilience. It tells the nervous system, you are safe in stress. You can breathe even here. You don't need to panic just because something feels sharp or new or hard. But this isn't about punishment. It's not about forcing the body into shock. It's about sensation. It's about remembering what it feels like to be awake in your skin, to be fully here, to feel life not just in comfort, but in contrast. Maybe it's a cold shower. Maybe it's a held breath. Maybe it's a conscious pause in the face of an urge. Whatever it is, let it be chosen. Let it be sacred. Let it be a way of saying to the morning, I do not fear sensation. I do not flee the edge. Because ice, like silence, is not cruel. It is clear. It reveals. It refines. And just as fire can shape steel, cold can shape calm, not by numbing, but by clarifying, not by hardening, but by awakening. And in that brief moment of mindful discomfort, you remember, serenity isn't found in avoiding life. It's found in being present with all of it, even the sharp parts, even the cold. Practice 6. One task with full presence. There is a fracture that begins not in the body, but in the mind. It starts when we do one thing while thinking of another, when we answer before listening, when we move before feeling, when we begin the day already divided, not by demands, but by the absence of presence. Multitasking is praised in the modern world, but the Stoic mind sees through it, because to be everywhere is to be nowhere, and to do everything without soul is to do nothing that truly holds meaning. Peace isn't found in productivity, it's found in singularity, in the undivided moment. Neuroscience reveals that when we split attention, we also split dopamine. Peaks come quickly, but they leave just as fast, and in their wake there is nothing but noise. Peace cannot grow where the soil is constantly disturbed. Focus, like silence, must be protected to root itself. Let the first task of the day be a ritual, not a race. Let it be slow, not because you lack time, but because you are choosing to belong fully to what you are doing. Let it be quiet, no music, no interruptions, just breath, just movement, just one thing, done completely. Imagine walking barefoot across earth. Every step is known, every texture is felt. Nothing is missed. That's what presence is, not more action, but more attention in the action, not more speed, but more soul in every gesture. You don't need a list to prove your value. You need a rhythm that holds your spirit, and sometimes that begins not with grand intention, but with one task, done with such fullness that the rest of the day remembers how it began and follows, calmly, steadily, whole. Practice 7, Stoic reading. One paragraph, one pause. We've been taught that wisdom comes from accumulation, from more books, more information, more words. But the Stoic path is the opposite. It's not about how much you read, but how deeply a single thought moves through you. Knowledge isn't measured by quantity, it's measured by resonance. Seneca wrote, "It is not the number of books that makes you learned, but the quality of your reading." And in that sentence lives a quiet revolution. That presence, not pages, is what makes wisdom real, that the heart doesn't need volume, it needs contact. One clear sentence, one powerful idea, one moment of real pause. There's a rhythm to this practice. You read not to finish, you read to absorb. One paragraph, then stop, close the book. Reflect, not with analysis, but with silence. Let the thoughts settle, not in the mind, but in the body, in the breath, in the posture of your day. Then write one sentence, just one. A sentence that doesn't repeat what was said, but reveals what was stirred. A trace of what the idea did inside you, a mark of how it moved you from noise to clarity. Wisdom isn't collected, it's embodied. An embodiment doesn't require time, it requires depth. You don't need more to become more, you need to go further into what already arrived. So when you read in the morning, don't rush, don't scan. Let the paragraph find you. Let it speak, then let it echo, because in that echo something shifts, and the rest of the day, even if untouched by books, carries the weight of one idea lived, not just understood. Practice 8. Morning movement without goals. There is a type of movement that doesn't liberate. It performs. A type of exercise that forgets the body is not an object to be fixed, but a field to be felt. When movement is chained to aesthetics, it disconnects. It demands, it compares, it separates you from your own rhythm. But there is another way, a way where the body isn't judged, it's listened to, where you move not to sculpt, but to circulate, not to prove, but to return. The Stoic morning doesn't seek metrics, it seeks motion, motion as medicine, motion as remembering. Science shows that movement releases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a molecule of mental clarity, a signal that tells your brain, we are alive, we are adapting, we are connected. But beyond biology, movement is spiritual. It's the soul stretching out of sleep asking, am I here? Let the morning offer you just that. A stretch, a slow walk, a series of breaths that move through the spine like light through water, not as a task, but as an offering, not for results, but for reconnection. Imagine wind moving through a field. The grass bends, flows, dances, not for performance, but for participation. That is what the body longs for, not pressure, permission, not goals, grace. Your body is not behind. It is waiting, waiting to be felt, not managed, to be lived, not measured. And when you give it that space, even for a few minutes, the soul remembers it has a home, not just in thought, but in flesh, in movement, in presence. Practice 9. Watch the sun, not the clock. There is an ancient rhythm the body still remembers, even as the world forgets. A rhythm not set by alarms or appointments, but by light, by nature's unfolding, by the quiet, steady rise of the sun. Yet most mornings begin not with this rhythm, but with the tyranny of time, a clock that demands instead of aligns. To start the day with numbers is to begin with pressure, but to begin with sunlight is to begin with presence. Because sunlight, especially in the first hour, doesn't just touch the skin. It speaks to the nervous system. It recalibrates. It tells your circadian rhythm, your serotonin levels, your biological self. You are safe, you are seen, you are in sync. This is not about routines. This is about returning to a way of waking that predates urgency, that doesn't rush you into performance, but invites you into coherence, into harmony with what is already rising. Not just around you, but within you. Let the sun meet your eyes gently. Let it mark the beginning not of a schedule, but of an awakening. Let your body feel the warmth, the stillness, the pulse of something vast, not as metaphor, but as medicine. Because when you start with the sun, you don't have to chase the day. You don't have to run after alignment. You are aligned. You are present. You are part of the unfolding, not separate from it. The clock may measure your time, but the sun, it attunes your spirit. And when your spirit is attuned, everything that follows moves differently, slower, quieter, more alive. Not because you have more time, but because you've remembered how to rise. Practice 10. Speak only after breathing. Words carry weight, not just in what they mean, but in how they are born. And too often we speak before we arrive, before our breath has settled, before our mind has softened, before our presence has returned to the body. In that haste, words become reaction, and reaction leaks energy. To speak without presence is to let the world pull your voice before you have rooted your truth. To answer before breathing is to hand over your power, not in anger, but in absence. And yet, it takes so little to change this. Just one pause, just one breath, just a moment before projection to tune your own vibration. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But how can we know what is right or true if we haven't yet returned to ourselves? Breath is that return. Breath is that filter. Breath is the gate between noise and clarity. Begin the day with silence. Not because there is nothing to say, but because not everything needs to be said right away. Let your first interaction come only after 3 conscious breaths. Not as a rule, as a remembering. That presence is more powerful than immediacy. Imagine an instrument before a concert. It isn't rushed, it is tuned, calibrated, made whole before offering sound to the world. You too are an instrument, and the tone of your speech begins not in your thoughts, but in your breath, in the stillness before the first word. When you wait to speak until your breath has arrived, something shifts, not just in your voice, but in your energy, in how others receive you, in how the day unfolds around you, because you are no longer chasing pace. You are carrying presence, and presence, quiet, rooted, deliberate, always speaks louder. Conclusion: morning is a choice, not a clock. There is a lie that many believe without question, that the day begins when the clock says so. That the start of morning is a matter of digits, not depth. But in truth, morning begins not with light, not with time, not even with routine. Morning begins with awareness. You don't need more time. You need more presence inside your time. That's what these practices offer. Not more to do, but more of you in what you already do. A return, not to productivity, but to posture. A quiet reclaiming of your space before the noise arrives. Seneca's voice echoes, "Life is long if you know how to use it." Not long in years, long in presence, long in stillness, long in the depth of a breath, the weight of a word, the texture of a single decision made with clarity. And Ryan Holiday brings it into today. Stillness is the key. Not stillness of body, but of being. The invitation is simple. Let your mornings become altars, not agendas. Let the beginning of your day be shaped by your soul, not by the pace of the world. Let your practices be not obligations, but thresholds, not performances, but portals. Each one a way back to yourself, because you are not late. You are not behind. You are simply remembering. Remembering that serenity is not a reward at the end of your efforts. It is the way you choose to begin, the way you breathe before you speak, the way you open your eyes not just to the light, but to your own presence in it. A candle does not wait for permission to light the room. It simply burns. And in that quiet flame, everything changes. Not because it forces, but because it is. And maybe that is all the world is waiting for. You, awake, present, aligned, before the world rushes in.